another video response to Daftloday. So this is his rationalization for his completely inaccurate, you know, as I'll just keep redundantly pointing out where he's just basically lying about his misinformation that he provided and the blatant statements and implications of what he was saying. I mean, he didn't just imply it, he directly said this stuff, and he's just now, you know, playing a game like I didn't say that. Yes, you did say that. You're just so full of shit. Oh, anyway.
DraftScience, do you have a particle model for the interferometer experiment?
This isn't my obligation. You said particles can't possibly be an answer. So you're basically saying you've proven that God can't exist or whatever you're saying, and so you're going to provide this evidence that it can't possibly be explained by a particle model. That was your assertion, that it's not possible because your model is so perfect that no other explanation is possible. And your model says nothing on the subject. You have no model. You don't even have math for the interferometer. You have nothing. You just have this vague notion that yes, interference happens in the world. Now, I demonstrate an experiment showing two pieces of glass. I'll draw them again. You know, we'll go back to the videotape. I mean, back to the drawing table. Got to find an easy way to switch this, I guess, so I don't have to keep going back and forth. And I don't know, maybe a keyboard shortcut or something. I'll have to look. But anyway. Yeah, I guess I'll leave this open while I'm drawing, and then I can make sure I'm seeing what I'm doing. But anyway, so I showed you, I'll show you, just draw it small over here, right, so it's not too, just get my paper into the way here. I showed you where two pieces of glass sit on top of each other, and they create a very various pattern. I mean, it can be lots of little lines, it can be, or it can look like big fat lines, depending on how thick it is, indicating that, you know, there's no Huygens in here. No Huygens, no Heisenberg. Yeah, same thing. NH. No Huygens, no Heisenberg, just refraction and deflections, you know, reflections inside the medium. Accounts for this pattern. A doctorate in physics is teaching that. So it's not a crazy theory. It's just two plain pieces of glass. There's nothing there. There's no quantum mechanical effect taking place. It just has to do with the fact that as the light comes in, it comes in at slightly different angles, and those slight tiny difference in the angles changes how it reflects in between these two layers of glass. And that's it. And whether it refracts, that is, it goes through, or whether it reflects back out. And that creates these patterns. And so this doesn't have anything to do with an interference pattern per se. It doesn't have to do with interference of photons and photons. The interference I would speculate that can exist is that you have all surfaces, like just like something we shoot at the moon. Let's say we shoot a probe at the moon. It goes into the moon's gravity and then it shoots out. The fact is that the energy equation for its going in and going out will be exact in the sense it'll bring as much energy in as it takes out with it. So it'll be an energy neutral in terms of the event. But if it gets into an orbit and stays there for a week or two, it's actually collecting momentum from the moon. And it'll actually change the moon's orbit a little tiny bit. So every time a photon hits a surface, it changes this surface a little tiny bit. Every single time. It changes this surface because it spends a little tiny bit of time in the surface. And certainly that's the case as if I described, as if the real case is when a photon goes in, what it really does is it interacts with electrons and it actually makes a U-turn. It as a force changes direction as a force and is readmitted as a new photon. Now if that's the truth, then as it spent time in here, it gave some of its energy to the things in here, even though it's leaving with all of its energy. Any place a photon spends time, it will change that thing. It won't go back to its original state when the photon leaves. If the photon spends any time inside a piece of matter, it will leave a residue behind. The matter won't be restored to its original state when the photon leaves. It'll be in a new state. And that's how this interference thing happens, in my opinion. Now, I don't have a proof of that yet, but all I had to do in this case is demonstrate that this interferometer isn't doing what you think is happening, which is a quantum mechanical thing is happening, where a wave function is traveling through the experiment. Because you have no explanation for how it's doing that. You don't have a model. So making obnoxious videos declaring what somebody else can't prove when you haven't proven anything is incredibly obnoxious. Your theory doesn't provide a model, an explanation. Draw me the two-slit experiment and the interference, and then show me the parallel drawing of the interference in the interferometer. Show me where it happens. Show me where the single photons interact with their wave function. Not with each other's wave functions, because we have no evidence that's a possibility. Show me where the single photon's wave function interferes and creates a path for the individual photons. Because we know the individual photons follow a path. That's what happens in the two-slit experiment. That's what happens in the single-slit experiment. By quantum mechanical law, the single photons change their direction. So show some damn fucking honor and consistency in your dogma, and at least make your dogma consistent, and explain to me the quantum mechanical mechanism, the Huygens and Heisenberging, that makes your interferometer work, before you obnoxiously declare you've proven all other theories impossible. An amazing thing. I never walked into this saying, I have a perfect mechanical theory to explain how interferometers work. I didn't make any such videos. I didn't even get to my interferometer video. I still was doing the QE video, I mean the QM. And I said, look, I'm going to get to the interferometer. I'm finishing this two-slit thing. I haven't even started my investigation. My point is I'm investigating your theory. And what I'm finding is you don't have one. There is no documentation for how your thing works. And I did finally find a suggestion of how it works. And this is the suggestion right here. It so overtly screams at you, this, okay, looks an awful lot, okay, like the pattern being created in the interferometer. It looks so much just like it that, yes, this is worthy of investigation. And this is just refraction. This isn't anything special. So I already did this, right? So now I'm being redundant. But I'm being redundant because he's claiming I haven't done any of this. And I've done this. I've suggested what I can know and what I don't know. And the real issue is I'm pointing out how their theory is wanting, and yet they're saying, I have to have my own prostications. I have to declare what my God looks like before I can say you don't have any evidence for your God. I'm asking you to prove your God. I don't have any obligation to prove my God. I certainly am attempting to, but I can't do it in, 38 hours? That's how long I've been thinking about it, 38 hours. Amazing fucking cunt.
Where is it? Have you wrote it up? Where is it? Have you made a video all about it? Where you focus upon your explanation?
So here too, he's acting as if I made the fucking video saying wave theory can't possibly explain the experiment. He's acting as if I made the video, declaring what the truth has to be. I made a video pointing out how your theory doesn't match the evidence. I don't have any obligation to do any more than that, to point out the flaws in your theory. I don't have an obligation to have a counter theory at this point. You have an obligation to shore up your evidence and explain why your God is God. And you're not doing that. Fucking cunt.
as a particle model without crying about the two slit.
No, without procrastinating and overstating and preposterously exaggerating and saying, I never said that we didn't manipulate the experiment entirely and use lenses and all kinds of things to only look at one portion of the pattern. I never said we didn't do that. Oh, but I was expected to know that's what you were talking about when you said light and dark. How does all the light go here? How does all the no light here? You said no light. You didn't say no light in this part of the pattern. The pattern shifted. You didn't say something like, how do you explain the pattern shift? You didn't say shit like that. You said, how do you explain there's no light? And I obviously said, I don't have to because that doesn't happen, retard.
Experiment, and now we're all evil deceivers, and I'm
No, you're a lying piece of scum, a petty lying piece of scum who exaggerates preposterously the value of your evidence and the rationality of your preposterously exaggerated claims that you have proven something. You haven't proven one fucking thing with anything called reasonably legitimate evidence.
And they're arrogant, and there's no evidence, and it's weak evidence. Where is your standalone explanation? Do you have one?
So again, I'm obligated. I cannot criticize their theory without having a counter theory. Now, I do have a counter argument I'm making right here. I'm pointing out little pieces of evidence. I pointed out how diffraction gradients are not new science. We know what they do. We know that a diffraction gradient, which is a half-silvered mirror, is going to create multiple images. And yes, one of the images will be 85% stronger than the other images. Okay, so one of them is going to certainly be a dominant image. But the fact is that a half-silvered mirror is a diffraction gradient. It has a bunch of single and double slits in it, so to speak. Okay, and we know what diffraction's primary function does. Not only does it create this little funny pattern that they draw, you know, the middle finger, but the real point of what it does is it spreads the light. It takes light that was going in a straight line and it makes it diverge. That's what a diffraction gradient does. So let me show it to you again, right? If I can find the piece of film. And I'll show you how a real diffraction gradient, like a half-silvered mirror, which has thousands or maybe many thousands of little tiny holes in it. We are no, if we're not on the screen, I'll be okay. I am. That one with these little tiny holes in it is going to create very small apertures, and the smaller the aperture, the wider the spread, which is fact. Proven millions of times. So here, I'm just merely inches from this film. Inches from it. Inches. Okay, we're not talking about meters away. None of that stuff. This film is just mere inches away from this surface. Look at the pattern. Huge divergence. Now, that wouldn't happen in the single slit. That wouldn't happen in the double slit. You wouldn't have stuff diverging that extremely at merely inches. It would take meters to create that kind of divergence, that kind of spread. So the smaller your holes, the smaller the little cuts, the wider the divergence. Fact. I'm offering facts as arguments. Facts. Facts. Look at that. Huge divergence. 3 inches away. 3 inches. 4.5 inches away. The divergence is now, there's friggin' dots on my frickin' wall. It's diverging so much. God, people are just such scum. So yes, my argument is that in your experiment, what's actually happening, okay, as I stated as a fact, that when light goes through the beam splitter, all right, it's diverging. And that one path of your interferometer, all right, creates much more divergence than the other path, which only goes this long, diverging. One path has a divergence length of this long. One path has a divergent length of this long. That's a huge difference in your beam splitter. Your beam splitter does not create two equal beams of light. They're not the same. And again, your theory is, okay, by your quantum mechanics, you're supposed to tell me, okay, you're supposed to explain to me quantum mechanically, all right, how the photons, the individual photon, injects in here, it goes through this machinery somehow, and somehow its own wave function, okay, goes through the device, goes back this way, and somehow creates two waves that interfere with itself to create its destination. You can't say there's a stream of photons, a whole bunch of photons coming in, and they're interacting with each other, because that's not quantum mechanics. I'll say it again. That's not quantum mechanics. That's not Heisenberg. That's not Huygens. That has absolutely nothing to do with any theory proposed by any wave theory proposed in the last 60 years regarding the two-slit or the single-slit pattern. None of those patterns are created by multiple photons, fuckhead. So explain the single photon path through your interferometer that creates your wave function and your interference pattern. It's not an interference pattern. Not in the two-slit manner. It's an interference pattern in the sense that the interferometer, the wave, the splitter, the beam splitter is creating a different circumstance for different paths. So again, he doesn't understand that either. So let's say you're hitting a surface at a certain point. And let's understand the surface is vibrating because it's getting hit by laser light. You can clearly understand that there would be peaks and troughs in the matter. And it would matter that if you had a beam that was diverging, even if it was diverging just a little, but it's diverging a lot, that if the beam was diverging and you change this distance just a little bit, you're going to change whether this photon hits a surface down or a surface up, a peak or a trough. That's the simple explanation. That's why there's a difference. Because any change, any subtle change, changes where the photon hits the beam splitter on the way back. And where it hits the beam splitter on the way back is going to decide whether it reflects, refracts, diffracts, or whether, most importantly, it's not going to go to the same location it would have gone to if the mirror hadn't moved. You stupid fucking lying cunt. Alright. Back to the video.
Let's get it done. Let's put it out there. Now, fair enough, you want to make a crybaby video.
I didn't make a crybaby video. Again, this is just so obnoxious.
Go ahead, but I would have thought...
Somebody makes preposterously exaggerated claims of what they've proven or they have evidence for, and he calls them crybabies when somebody calls you out and says you demonstrated nothing, you proved nothing, you've shown how your theory doesn't answer the question. In no way did you demonstrate how you have an answer, therefore you can qualify that no particle theory could possibly explain it, even though you haven't considered every particle theory, even though you haven't spent 10 seconds analyzing the fucking experiment. You make these bold, obnoxious fucking claims, and you have nothing. You're just a religious kook that just keeps saying, I love Jesus, I love Jesus. Why don't you just sing songs about how you love quantum mechanics, and that you cannot, will not see, no, I will not listen, I will not hear. I mean, you're just preposterously obnoxious. To ridicule people for asking you to provide the evidence of your bold claims, call them crybabies because they say, well, will you please provide a piece of evidence because I don't see any evidence for your fucking claim, you fucking entire... Oh, you're just a... You're such a piece of shit.
I would certainly, if somebody told me something was impossible and I knew I could do it, I would think I would go do the thing and film me doing the thing and say, haha.
Right, and again, what have I been saying for 3 days now? This is a fucking complex experiment. There's a bunch of little pieces in here. There's a glass layer, then a half silvering, and then another glass layer. there's like 6 different refraction and deflection points in the interferometer alone. And then we have the beam diverging as it reflects off a mirror, which means that that can be a subtle change because the mirror is going to have a surface also. And every time there's a little subtle change in the angle, there's a different angle of refraction. So he's just paying no attention to the fact that there's lots of elements to this experiment, and he thinks he has them all under control. I'm the one saying, no, you don't have any of this under control, and certainly I'm not claiming I have it perfectly understood yet. But what I do have is shown you evidence of mechanical explanations that don't require any woo, that have 2 pieces of glass just sitting on top of each other, and they produce a pattern so reminiscent of this pattern, in the sense you just make a subtle little bounce on one of those layers of glass and you completely change the pattern.
There you are. Anyhow. Now then, Inmendham gets rather upset because he says...
Because you're a lying piece of shit. I hate fucking liars. I hate misrepresenters. I hate misparaphrasers. You're disgustingly unfair to any argument you make. You're disgustingly unfair.
When I say, and I clearly say, it can be set up so.
Yeah, right. He clearly says it can be set up so, and everybody was supposed to know the setup was, I'm not showing you the whole pattern. Of course the light goes both directions. Of course there's no such thing as no light. There's just a change in the pattern. Instead of saying, oh yes, of course, there's just a change in the pattern. One place goes light, another place in the pattern goes dark. The pattern changes. He never said any such thing. He never suggested any such thing. He suggested big yellow spot, all light, dark spot, all dark. That's what he suggested.
So, right, now, because I don't introduce the complication of telling you that we do set it up by use of a lens, we can experimentally, visually set it up so we have this result, dark and light.
No, there is no just dark and light. So again, just understand, that's not setting it up for the result that there's just dark and light. There isn't just dark and light. That isn't what the machine produces, is just dark and light. Both paths have light. Both paths have dark. The dark and light are mixed in a pattern, and you're being completely dishonest to sit there and say you can represent that accurately by going, here's a little dark spot, here's a little white spot. Now, I've accurately represented the experiment. That is so fucking dishonest.
Inmendham is correct that in many circumstances we set the interferometer up and we see what we call fringes.
In all circumstances, half the light goes one way and half the light goes the other way. There's no circumstance in which half the light doesn't do that, or 1/4 of the light once you've gone through the machine twice. No, well, it's half and half in the end result. Except the fact that, as I pointed out, this divergence that I'm talking about gets so wide that it misses the mirror, or it misses depending on how big your beam splitter is, it actually, some of the light goes outside of the beam splitter, never even reflects off of it. So you don't get all your light back. But there's no circumstance, you can't set up any circumstance in any way ever, okay, where you don't have 50-50 going those 2 paths. So you're just lying to imply that, oh, it's only in certain circumstances where the light is 50-50. No, in all circumstances, the light's 50-50, and then the only thing you can do is change the pattern. You lying sack of shit.
And because Inmendham sees, when we move the lens, an apparent just shifting of the fringes continuously, yeah? like they're moving, but they're not.
No, they don't have to continuously move. They can be quite static. If you don't touch the machine, they stay exactly where they are. You touch the machine, they move. So there's no constant movement you're implying.
Not moving, like if you shine a laser from the Earth at the moon, you could say you made a dot travel faster than the speed of light, but in truth, you're perceiving a dot moving, but nothing is actually moving faster than the speed of light because it's made up of photons that are in effect being sprayed, and what's just registering is on the eye. Anyhow.
Anyhow. Yes, anyhow, we're not talking about this being an optical illusion in some way. We're talking about the fact that there's actual photons and actual positions, and the positions of the photons change. I haven't implied anything else. I haven't suggested anything else. It's clearly my statement. Yes, the photon that was going one place goes somewhere else. It doesn't go nowhere. It goes somewhere else. It takes the other path. It hits a different spot on the interferometer and therefore goes through it instead of reflecting. It hits my jagged line in a new location, which means it takes a different direction. The path of the photon is changed. No wave functions, no blah blah. It just changes where it lands on the interferometer because you changed how it reflected, the angle at which it reflected, by moving it.
I digress. Now then, the reason for the fringes, like the reasons for the fringes in Newton's rings.
Okay, so let's understand. Newton's rings is now a quantum mechanical effect. So let's understand, that's the claim made. It's the single slit is Newton's rings. There's no way of getting around that. Same exact thing. So if the single slit's a quantum mechanical effect requiring a photon to have a wave function, then this explanation about refraction and lenses is inappropriate.
It's because of lens path length, okay? So when you make an adjustment in an optical system, or I've not thought this through, but it's certainly true with lenses.
Yeah, you haven't thought it through, yet you're making For Dummies videos and making bold assertions about what can or cannot be the explanation. So you can see you haven't thought it through, and yet you're making these bold assertions, and you think that's rational behavior. That's how a rational person gets into a conversation about what the truth is to say, yes, I haven't thought about it, here's my just the top off my head claim is, you're full of shit, I'm always right. I mean, you can't be more of an obnoxious fucking pig.
I suppose it must be working, but this is the reason. Yeah, it makes sense. You're beaming a dot, but there are different path lengths involved. Okay, and similarly with diffraction through a convex lens, each one is a different path involved. So that's why you see the rings. The rings is
right. And so my exact point that I illustrated by providing the video evidence of the two pieces of glass, illustrating the exact point, is that, and pointing out over and over again how there's diffraction in this experiment. The diffraction is the same thing. You could think of diffraction, divergence of the beam. The spreading of the beam, you could think of that essentially as a kind of lens effect. Instead of the lens creating the distortion, the fact that the beam has spread has created the distortion, because every one of these now reflecting angles are refracting angles inside of the medium it's going to be transmitted through. Every one of these angles will be different than this straight through path, quite obviously. So in a sense, divergence of light is creating a lensing effect all on its own as soon as it hits a medium, as soon as it transitions from one refractive index to another, it's going to the effect of the changed angles is going to be revealed in a change in how the light's going to leave. It's going to leave in different, either taking angularly different paths.
Specifically a feature of divergence of the laser, okay? and then the double divergence.
So I didn't even bring up the divergence of the laser because it's so minute compared to the divergence created by this little tiny film, as I demonstrated, more than once now, 3 times now. This film creates huge divergence, and this film can be easily put with the little wavy equal signs, is very similar to a half silvered mirror. Very similar concept. Very small holes, openings. Same idea. And you saw how quickly the single beam spread. Just inches away, and the spread was inches. Inch for inch almost. Probably almost more than that. For every inch away, you create an inch of spread. That's how dramatic the divergence is. And he's just going to talk about common laser divergence in these short distances of a foot or two, which wouldn't make much difference. It wouldn't be a significant amount of divergence. The beam splitter is what's diverging the light. It's not laser divergence, it's beam splitter divergence.
Back from a mirror. There is an amount of divergence, but it's with laser light, it's on this scale not appreciable. Okay.
And it wasn't my claim. So again, the straw man. It was never my claim that laser divergence is significant in this experiment. Never. It would be in a 2 mile long interferometer at LIGO, but anyway, we're not talking about LIGO. In these common experiments where it's only a foot of length of distance, it wouldn't be significant. I never said otherwise. So again, another fake straw man, totally misrepresent my argument. I said it clearly. I showed the film in previous videos. I mentioned it in the last video. I mentioned it in the video he's responding to. I pointed out I'm accusing the beam splitter of diverging the light. I'm not accusing the laser of just diverging on its own. The beam splitter diverges the light. I mean, how big a lying piece of scum can you be? I said it so overtly, and here you are just totally misrepresenting my argument over and over again.
Or a decade or more, and he's never produced a theorem and then gone out and built something and showed all these assertions he makes. Yeah? I uploaded the video.
So here I show links to the lens, the pieces of glass on top of each other. I show the videotape of it. I show Professor Lewin doing the single slit experiment. I show the patterns. I show the evidence of the experiments being done, and he declares I have to do them myself to show you the evidence of the experimental evidence. Then I sit there and wave this diffraction film right before your eyes. I show you how it works. Right before your eyes I do it. I take a picture of a lens shooting two reflected images, okay, and one of them is inverted. There's 2 images. One of them's inverted, just off a single piece of glass, as a representation that refractions off of glass and reflections off of glass are a significant component. They could have a lot to do with what's happening in this experiment. Optics is really important to this experiment. Fucking cunt.
That you can make on an image, on a screen, these. Now, he even admits it in the video and then forgets about it.
A liar. Just a complete lie. Complete fucking lie. All I admitted is that, yes, part of the pattern can change. I never said all light or all dark. I said that's impossible. I said exactly that way. I said that's impossible. That will not fucking happen. I said you're wrong to imply it in your fucking video. So you fucking are just a lying cunt to say I agreed that what you said was true. I never did any such fucking thing, you lying sack of shit.
And you can't experimentally produce these results.
You can't.
And the point is, given the fact that you can experimentally produce these results, and that there's a wave model.
All right, so he's happy with saying these results where he has it all yellow and all black. All yellow, all black. And he's saying these results again. So he's affirming the fact that he thinks that's an accurate description of the reality. That not including the yellow line around the black dot, or not including the black line around the yellow dot, is being accurate, is accurately representing what happens. No, it's not. It's completely deceptive. And for a fucking malicious and petty purpose, deceptive. And based on a nonsensical theory that you didn't even cognize properly, because you haven't thought about this at all, you arrogant fuck. Where again, you still don't even understand this is about single photons. Somehow, for this to be quantum mechanical, you have to convert it into something where single photons are interfering with themselves. That's quantum mechanics, retard. Do I have to explain that to you? That's quantum mechanics. Single photons interfering with themselves. That's quantum mechanics, you fucking cunt.
Problem. If I go and say that there's no particle model can do it, well, why don't you demonstrate and show a particle model? There's lots of verbiage saying, oh, you changed the refractive index of the beam splitter. Yeah? Well, how can that work?
The point I made in the illustration was that obviously you change the angle which the light is hitting, and that changes the reflective index of the point on the beam splitter you're hitting. I didn't say the beam splitter's changing refractive indexes. I'm just saying the surface of the beam splitter certainly is being changed by being hit by photons. The energy of the photons is changing the surface, waving it. I said those words. Even, as much as I hate even using the word waves, it's disturbing the surfaces. The energy hitting and reflecting disturbs the surfaces and creates standing waves. And depending on how the photons reflect back and hit, if they're hitting in different locations, that will change the wave on the surface. And therefore, the pattern of the light that goes through will be different. There's your generalization of a particle theory. It's a generalization. Yeah, I don't have all the details yet because, again, I've been spending 36 hours thinking about it. I didn't realize the truth of the two pieces of glass on top of each other. I only saw that video 3 days ago, you fucking cunt. How in that time am I supposed to compose a whole theory based on a new understanding that this is about reflections and refractions inside the beam splitter? What a cunt. You're the one who made the declaration that it can't be possible. All right? You're the one who has to provide the evidence. I don't have to defend myself against your bold assertions. You have to defend your bold assertions. You make the extraordinary claim and then you say, prove me wrong. Oh, I saw a UFO last night. Prove me wrong. Where's your evidence I didn't? Prove me it didn't happen. That's what this cunt is doing while he calls other people whiners. This fucking obnoxious piece of shit.
Yeah, you're saying by moving a reflector further away, you're saying you change the refractive index.
Yes, just think about it. You move the mirror a little bit away. What happens to that divergence he has right on his own image there? What happens to that spread as I move it away? As I move the spread away, that's why I change where the light's going to hit the beam splitter. It hits different locations now. And at those different locations, there's a different likelihood of reflection or refraction. Fact. Not complicated fact.
There's been no demonstration, you have no demonstration of changing refractive indexes. If you change the refractive index of this glass...
Again, I wasn't implying that you have to change the reflective index of the entire glass. I implied that the surface can be disturbed and by moving things forward and back, you change the angle that the light's traveling, which means it will hit a different location on the surface. I said those things explicitly. Just as clearly as I just said them now. I can't say them more clearly.
Yeah? You understand you change the angles with which the light came out, right? You could do this as an experiment without worrying about reflections. You know, you could shine light on it, heat it up, do anything you like, and you'll find you won't change the refractive index so much.
No, that's complete nonsense. He said you could just heat it up. No, all you do is change the temperature a tiny bit and you'll change the pattern that shows up. If I take 2 pieces of glass and I do that exact experiment I showed 4 videos ago or whatever it was, and you warm the air around those 2 pieces of glass, you'll change the pattern.
Perhaps if it will change slightly. But the point is,
it'll change. So you just said horseshit. You just said a piece of horseshit because you're just making this up as you go along. You haven't done what I have done, which is actually go look at the different patterns, look at the experiments, try to find out how the damn fucking thing works. No, you have your dogma. The Pope wrote some simple talking points. You're just shoving your talking points out your fucking bullshit gob with these bold assertions that you've proven evolution impossible. You haven't done any of that.
Or a card being placed in between, yeah. And if you want to suggest such, then the burden is on. I'm saying you can't show how that's mechanically done with particles. And not only that.
No, that's not what you said. You said it's impossible. You said no theory could ever do it. No particle theory could ever do it because you're so sure it's impossible because you have such a rock-solid explanation that you don't have. Your insane accusation of impossibility was your accusation. You said it, jackass. You didn't say, I haven't seen anybody just demonstrate a particle theory that seems viable. You didn't say something reasonable. You said something preposterously obnoxious and then had no will to defend your nonsense. You fucking piece of shit.
You suggest that not only it's to do with the energy. Right? So remember, each one of these parts. Why does a reflective photon, which in Mendeleev's schema is a pair of things, travelling a bit further? How does the beam splitter know the distance that's travelled?
Exactly because of the divergence you have drawn just above that, right? So that divergence he has drawn just above that is the exact reason. Because the angles change. And that would happen with just a common laser. A common laser diverges enough that you could actually create angular differences by moving the mirror. But clearly the more divergence, the more you amplify those effects. So that's what makes the instrument so fucking sensitive. The instrument is so sensitive because the divergence is so extreme that any little changes in the distance creates a lot more change in where the photon lands because it increases the spread. So if I move the mirror back away from the experiment, I'm increasing the width of the spread. If I move the mirror forward, I'm compressing the spread. And by a dramatic amount of distance on the surface as it's returning to the interferometer. So I'm hitting a completely different location on the fucking piece of glass that is the beam splitter. I hit a completely different location with just a tiny bit of movement. That's how, fuckhead!
How has that photon changed? Yeah? And how has it changed
so, again,
to such a degree that now...
Glenn, my fundamental bottom line part of my whole fucking theory of physics here is that you can't change a photon. You can't. It does one thing. It moves the speed of light in one direction. And the only thing that can change it is a surface, is a piece of matter. It has to interact with something to be changed in its direction. But the fact that it's going the speed of light can never change. The only thing you can change is where it's heading. Period. That's it. The photon doesn't know shit. The material circumstance of the experiment changes. It changes where the photon ends up going because the atoms in the material move it a different place. You dumbass.
You'll either have a bright spot or a bright spot turn dark, yeah, in that precise location. Right? And how is it that if you block it, that...
Listening for it. I haven't listened to this yet, so he's thinking about it. Well, how does it happen that when you block it, it goes all dark? Oh, that's right, I can't say that anymore because that was complete shit. It doesn't go all dark.
Somehow it's not changing the refractive index. It's just digitally allowing there to be an image, a partial image there in that exact.
Allowing a partial image. No, it's just returning the experiment to just one beam of light that's split in two, and half the light goes one way and half the light goes the other way. And one is a little tiny bit diffracted.
Yeah? And assuming these particles are travelling in one-dimensional straight lines, as in Mendel likes to say. I mean, which is a ridiculous notion. Yeah? We live in 3D space. Yeah?
So he thinks the photon moves in 3 dimensions at the same time. It goes this way, and it goes that way, and it goes this way at the same time. Sure it does. You're an idiot. It goes one vector, that way. That's it. It doesn't go some way, I'm going a little bit this way, and I'm going that way. I'm going a little bit this way, 0 miles an hour, because I always have to go the speed of light in the actual way I'm going. I mean, what's your theory? No, I'm going a little bit, I'm going half the speed of light this way and half the speed of light that way. No, I'm going 1/3 the speed of light this way, and 1/3 the speed of light that way, and 1/3 the speed of light that way. Yeah, and that equals this way. That's his theory. No, I argue it's going one speed in one dimension. Yes, the dimension can be any vector, but it's always just one dimension. It's left, right, and it's up and down mean nothing. The only thing that means something to it is forward. You fucking dumb cunt.
Things can travel in straight lines, but nothing can escape the 3 dimensions of existence we're trapped in. Yeah?
Right. Well, the whole point is that's exactly what photons do. They don't have any material substance left to right. That's why we don't see them going by, is because they don't have any material substance left to right. And they don't have any material substance up and down. They only have material substance going the way they're going. Asshole.
I'd actually like him to explain what it means to travel in one dimension. Is it something different than saying it travels in straight lines?
No, it's not. It's no different. I'm just saying you think a straight line is a 3-dimensional object. From what I understand, a line is a 1-dimensional object. You don't think so? You think a line is a 3-dimensional object? I don't think so. There. I guess we fundamentally disagree. And I think you're a fucking idiot, and I'm the smart guy. Because a line is a 1-dimensional object, asshole.
And give a thorough account of what the hell that means. Yeah?
I think
Because
I've done that.
anything that travels in a straight line in 3D space can have its coordinate system. I can say my coordinate system is the one, not, rather than your coordinate system.
It doesn't matter. We're talking about the line's coordinate system. The line only has 1-dimensional reality. It only exists as a 1-dimensional object. We all know that you have to have 2 lines to have 2 dimensions. And then you have to have 3 lines to have 3 dimensions. And that each one of those lines is in 1 dimension. They define the 1 dimension by being a line in that dimension. I mean, I can't get any simpler than that. It's the simplest of geometry. You're a dumbass.
And I can speak about that traveling direction as having components. There's no way of getting around that. So again,
No, because he wants to create some artificial bent spacey crap around it, like whatever, some kind of fake space, and say, I'm going to force it now to have 3 dimensions because I'm going to create a fake geometry to measure 3 dimensions for the line. It doesn't change. The line is a 1-dimensional object. It can be drawn on a piece of paper in 1 dimension and be fully functional as a line. It is not, no one calls lines 3-dimensional objects. Cubes are 3-dimensional objects. Spheres are 3-dimensional objects. Circles are 2-dimensional objects. Well, 1-dimensional, actually.
diverge. I'd be critical of him of DraftScience when he does that. But it's just obfuscation.
Oh man, amazing,
deflection.
amazing. So he just wasted time talking about, oh, you can't say a photon is a one-dimensional object, that it only has influence and reality in one dimension, the dimension it's heading, the dimension it will hit something in, from that dimension. That's it. It can't function in 3 ways at one time. can't move in 3 dimensions at one time.
Reflection about my arrogance, yeah, about my not knowing, about my lying, about what happens, what doesn't happen, yeah, and I've explained now how he's wrong on all these fronts, except
Amazing, just fucking amazing. So he thinks he's somehow explained, and now we can just go back to assuming, yeah, we're right. I mean, this is obviously an interference pattern, and it's obviously created by the interference mechanism. The quantum mechanical, blah, 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 the details. Lensing, yeah, we threw it through, yeah, well, look with a telescope or something, you can see, you'll see all the quantum mechanical stuff. We just don't draw the telescope in the picture because, that's cheating. That's complicated. We don't want to confuse you with the facts. So, blah, blah, blah. We're right, he's wrong. Blah, 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 right? Blah, 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 we're right. Blah, 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 he's wrong. Blah, 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 blah. You got enough details, right? Fuck you.
The arrogance. I mean, the arrogance is coming across particularly strong in the latter video. A, because it's a change of style and it's a bit of fun, and B, because I made quite a poor video where I spoke very slowly. So I wanted to speed it up as well.
Yeah, that's right. I've had to speed up this video to 1.5 actually. Yeah, you're still slow as fuck.
So yeah, in the Newton's rings, it's not about a source of light.
By the way, I don't care how slow somebody talks. It's really okay. Be accurate. Don't be a liar. Don't be an exaggerator. Don't make preposterous claims you don't prove. That's the stuff that's offensive. I don't care if you fart in your goddamn videos, but quit being liars and misrepresenters. Quit being just overtly, obnoxiously, insanely unreasonable in your accusations and your prognostications.
And divergence, increasing divergence, and any divergent theory, yeah, has to explain the gaps. In Mendham's double-slit divergence theory, yeah, wherein he talks about these at the edges, yeah, the photon is kind of bouncing up.
I don't have a double-slit divergence theory. I have a double-slit refraction theory. The light hits electrons and is changed by the electrons. Divergence isn't what's actually happening. I mean, it's an actual effect, is divergence. But the actual function is as mechanical as light being bent in a lens. The electrons are changing the direction of the photons. The photons do nothing but play victim to the position of the electrons.
About and then split and then diverging, yeah? This account provides insinuation that we get a continuum of divergence. It doesn't give an account for the dark regions.
Of course it does. I mean, I don't know. You can't please this guy. If you can only move 3 degrees each time you hit an electron, so each time you hit an electron you move 3 degrees, that means you can't move 2 degrees. That means all the even numbers are out. You'll never hit an even spot on the target. You'll always end up at odd numbers. So there's nothing to argue about. Well, no, that's not true. 3 plus 6 would be 3 plus 3 would be 6. So that's an even number. But you get my point. The halves won't work. So anything that's a multiple of the half of 3 won't be a place the light ends up going. So it's always just going to be 3, 6, 12. Always those proportions. And the only thing that changes when you change the frequency of the light, you change that number from 3 to say 2.5. And so it's 2.5 plus 2.5, which is 5, plus 2.5, which is 7. Those are always going to be your proportions. So again, of course I've accounted for the dark spaces. So just another fucking lie by a fucking liar.
And neither can it give an account for the dark regions in the interferometer.
Well, I've just pointed out this. It's the same thing in the sense that the mechanism is quite similar, in the sense that the surface of the material is defined by electrons, and that electrons pointed this way are going to be different than electrons pointed this way in terms of where your light's going to end up going. I mean, holy fucking shit. I mean, I have to just keep saying it over and over and over again. Then people say, you just keep saying the same thing. They just keep making the same bold accusations that I've answered and answered and answered, and they just keep ignoring the fucking answers. They keep making accusations that I can't say photons exist in one dimension. They're going to force the photon to be a three-dimensional object, even though it has no left, right, or up and down.
Moreover, focusing on the structure of the edges, very definitely, won't give an account for when we know the which way path, how knowing the path would change the structure and the behaviour. Now,
There's absolutely no evidence that you ever do know the path. So where did you ever prove that knowing the path means we change the behavior? Where's your evidence of that? You have absolutely zero evidence of that. Zero.
Inman searches double slit experiments and find lots of lay discussions to pull pieces, but what he should search is papers on which way experiments. And
which way experiments are polarized film experiments. They're not double slit experiments. They're light through crystal experiments. It has nothing to do with this fucking subject, you insane kook. Go find a more complex experiment. That's what he's basically saying. Don't bother looking at this simple experiment and analyzing it. No, go analyze the very complex and extraordinary experiment, because see, that works so much better for us, because yes, the details are so complicated that you're not going to be able to know the truth. So, but yeah, don't look at this simple experiment, analyze it, because then you might find the right answer. Fuck. You are just incredible. Which way experiments are the real thing. This isn't as real as it gets. This isn't as simple as it gets. No, you have to do a which way experiment, because that's so much simpler. There's so much few moving parts in it. All the features are so much more understandable. Don't go looking at this. Don't look at Newton's rings and say why. No. Go find a convoluted and complex experiment to analyze. Fuck, amazing asshole.
Research the history of these and what's been done and pull one of them to pieces rather than,
taking the simplest experiment that is the most famous nail in the coffin evidence, the famous Young experiment, right? No, don't go for the heart of quantum mechanics. Go fucking cut its little toe off. Go waste your time cutting the little toe off. Don't stab it in the heart. No, I'm going to stab your quantum mechanics right in its fucking nuts. Right there in its nuts. Right in where the bullshit started. With your silly, wacky theories about this experiment. This experiment created all your Copenhagen bullshit. All your fucking many worlds bullshit. Now, maybe it didn't create dark matter, but it's almost responsible for the whole idea of let's just invent bullshit as answers. This is where science lost its fucking mind and put its head up its fucking ass, was with this fucking experiment. This is where science put its head up its ass. Right there. With that bullshit answers to a fucking simple problem. Completely wacky, spooky action, bullshit answers to a simple fucking goddamn problem.
In education, they're just like I was trying to get the concept to you that we can have a light and a dark patch, and chose not to tell you how we arrange it such by putting in a lens.
Again, a light and a dark patch, he's still saying not a pattern change, but all the light goes one way or all the light goes the other way. So again, just a complete canard, complete misrepresentation of what he demonstrated. Look, his image is still up there. Big yellow dot, big black dot. He says that's an honest representation of the pattern. It's a completely dishonest representation.
Because it doesn't change the nature of the question. How can particles, and does somebody have an explanation how changing the distance will suddenly change the whole...
I've already explained it 17 different ways. We'll go back to, we go back to my image. We just look at his image. Well, he changed the image. But whatever, it's obviously the divergence is critical to it, and that's what's changing where the photons are hitting the beam splitter, and where you hit on the beam splitter will decide whether you go through the beam splitter or whether you reflect off the beam splitter, whether you hit the silvered mirror or whether you go through one of the holes. That will be decided by that angular change.
Atomic interactions in the beam splitter. Does somebody have an account for how blocking one of the paths will change the whole atomic interactions in the beam splitter?
Okay, let's understand. Change all the atomic interactions in the beam splitter. All blocking one of the paths does, again, let's just remember, it takes away half the photons. And obviously, half the photons don't hit the beam splitter now. Half of them never hit it a second time. And he's saying, why would you think photons not hitting something might change where photons go? Yeah, well, I'm saying why that is. I've said why that is.
Yeah. Prove me wrong. Prove me wrong that my arrogance led to hubris. Yeah?
So again, he's saying, prove me wrong in the sense that he said, my God is God, your God is impossible, and he provided no evidence, and I'm supposed to prove him wrong. It's just an amazingly preposterous pile of nonsense. I don't have to prove you wrong. You demonstrate yourself wrong in your bold and insane assertion for which you provided no evidence of either your God being God or that it's impossible that any other God is God. You didn't prove either argument in any way whatsoever.
That's what I said.
Fucking cunt. Alright. Cat wants attention, so I think we'll leave it at that. He has made another short video, but you know, we'll get to that in the comments section or some other thing or whatever, or however. But anyway, yes, I do want to do some experiments. I think I'm going to buy a beam splitter. I think I found a cheap enough one for my budget, and so I will be doing further research. But again, I've already shown some experiments done, and you see I've shown the pattern blinking. You see it actually in the videos. I mean, it's just blinking in terms of the change in the path length. Where the hell was that video? That's his dummies video. That ain't gonna help me any. It must be this way. Mickelson Morley. Yeah, that might be it. Okay. And yeah, the movement is an illusion. Okay, so it could be conceded that there's no movement laterally, and all that's really changing is positions of on and off. I mean, where photons go and where photons don't go. And it looks like movement towards the center or something, but that's just the illusion part. But, clearly watching this, you don't see the center go completely dark. And, you could argue that this could just be because of the bad optics. The fact that you can't resolve that center line it doesn't have the detail, it lost all of its detail. Well, that could be because of lens flare. The exposure of the camera is killing some of the detail. But clearly these bands get from wide, narrower, narrower, and narrower. And that's not indicative of an interference pattern. That's indicative of a gradient, a change in pressure, a change in change, a change in the excitement of the glass itself. All right. So I'll leave it there for now. So I'll be back, and we'll have to play with this. Look, this might be the Achilles heel. This experiment, I think the two-slit experiment is the Achilles heel, but this might be the Achilles heel. This might be the thing where I knock them down. Goliath falls on its ass. Because it's already becoming quite clear to me, just from these other experiments with these pieces of glass, and when you think about reflective indexes and how they change, and you think about the Brewster angle, that there's lots of room for better explanations for this than some quantum mechanical wavy thing that they didn't even explain how it works. Where's the waves and where they're interfering with each other? And where's the single photon doing where's the quantum mechanical explanation? Where's the quantum mechanical drawing of this experiment? They haven't provided that. So maybe this is their Achilles heel. But they're going down. I mean, it's clear they don't have evidence for their claims. It's clear they exaggerate. It's clear they just don't care about every counter argument you make. It's clear you point out how their math isn't all that accurate. You point out how the pattern isn't right. You point out how it doesn't work over a distance. You point out how it creates affinities. You point out all these problems, and they just keep ignoring the fact and keep saying it's the most proven theory in the history of mankind. No, it's not even close to that. It's a piece of crap as an accurate understanding of reality.